Hi, everybody. It's Rochelle from Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting. I have not been on Instagram Live in a little while. I've been doing some stuff over on Facebook, and I'm excited to bring the Artful Leadership interview series to Instagram today. And I'm going to be featuring Dr. Nikki Finn, who's going to hop on in just a sec. But I want to share a little bit about this interview series is really about tapping into the wisdom and the experience of folks who are working at the intersection of the arts, education, healing, and social change, and really pick their brains about how they have adapted to the crazy situation that we're all in with this pandemic, and really follow their lead when as we're moving forward. And so many of them have so much wisdom to share as far as how we move forward with our students and our staff in ways that are trauma informed, that are restorative, that are creative. And that is why we're bringing Dr. Nikki on today. So here she comes. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Can you see me? I can't see you.
No, I can't see you. There you go.
Yay! You made it on. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Instagram Live. We've got some folks watching already, which is awesome. Hello, hello, folks. So, Sandra, you should be able to see her in just a sec. Like there's a little delay on live, but I'll just introduce myself and then I'll introduce our guest today. So my name is Rochelle Archer, and I'm an educational consultant, and my company is called Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting. And my work is really about helping educators to prioritize their own well-being so that you educational leaders can really lead with a full tank, and also so that you can learn to create a culture of community care that can really sustain your students and your staff through challenging times, so that you can really reach the outcomes that you want and really let the community and the culture do the heavy lifting for you. Because when you're out there doing it by yourself, you're doing a lot of reactive work instead of proactive work of building community. And I love talking to all these different creatives and artist leaders and folks that I call artful leaders, who are kind of showing the way through this time. And so I'm super excited to have Dr. Nikki Finn here today, who's a social emotional learning coach who's working with students, parents, and teachers. She's got a doctorate in educational leadership and has a background in public health. So she's really working at this intersection of wellness and education, and also, like me, has a background in expressive arts and has done some writing with some SEL ebooks. And I'm going to stop talking and just, Nikki, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about you and your work. What are you up to these days?
Okay, great. First of all, I have over about 20 years of experience, 15, 20 years of experience working in education settings with K-12 youth, and just trying to figure out how to help them, how to support educators. So when I went and got my doctorate, it made sense to also get my certificate in expressive arts, because I was learning in some of these capacities, because education and health education have an intersection, but also education and trauma do as well. And so that really opened up a gateway for me to introduce art as a communication platform and a health promotion avenue to help students be successful. And not just students, but also how to, just kind of help educators understand that they can actually communicate to students by using art strategies. So I am a freelance writer and also an artist, and I do both of those in my social emotional learning coaching. And so right now it's just been really about visibility, right? Because during this crazy time of COVID, I think we've learned quite a few lessons. One of which is, hey, mental health is important. It's showing up in our classrooms. It's showing up in our Zoom links, right? And whether we have the language for it or not, it really is about tapping in, figuring out what is that language, that makes mental health okay to talk about or understandable, or not some over there kind of topic, because mental health and education certainly go hand in hand. You can't teach students who are hungry. You can't teach students who don't feel safe. You can't teach students who are just trying to compartmentalize and get to the next moment. So I think that that's definitely been where I've headed with a lot of my work, especially with middle schoolers, and getting them to do assignments has been really hard, right? getting students to be responsible. And a lot of times people will say, oh, well, they're just lazy, or they just don't want to do it, or they're at home and this is what we do at home. Well, all along, I just feel like we should have been setting them up for success in maybe a different way that we haven't thought about, and using some more active and participatory strategies that can set them up for success, like teaching them elapsed time, teaching them time management, teaching them how to ask for help, and making that seem okay, especially in cultures where that might not be okay to ask for help, or it might not be okay to express emotion. And so with COVID, with homeschooling, with just explosive, different dynamics at home, just blowing up kind of in people's faces about what do I do, and how do I put out this fire, and how do I put out this fire, I think social emotional learning and art-based strategies can definitely serve as a bridge to provide some relief.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes people think that social emotional learning means that we have to be talking about our feelings. And those of us that do creative work know that it's actually a lot more than that. Right?
Yeah.
And creative engagement is a huge part of that. And so can you tell us a little bit about how you use the arts as a social emotional learning coach who's working with teachers? Like, how does that show up? Like, what might be some examples of what you do?
Well, really, this is started with my dissertation when I looked at just studying more and learning more about student frustration. Is how do I learn more about this? And so I use art-based strategies for this purpose. And you can find that how students make art can kind of give you some sort of idea of where they might be frustrated at, or how they're being, I indicate some sort of, for instance, the perfectionist kind of student might just be overwhelmed with the task of even creating art because the paper is, and my lines are not straight. And how do I have the perfect, image here, or there's no symmetry? And so these mental blocks really kind of block them from doing any art at all. And so one of the things that I've really done is just say, nobody's going to look at this, and this isn't for judgment, but this is a way for you to tell me something that your words just cannot, because there must be something going on inside of your body. And take their lead, and whether it's digital art or whether it's journaling or the visual journaling, the collaging, the drawing, it doesn't matter. I just kind of pretty much let the students do the leading there with how they're comfortable communicating. And it could just be, I'm angry, and it's all in red, and there's a loudmouth right next to it because I don't know another way. But it's matter of really getting to the point and how we construct meaning. You know, what does anger mean? What does it look like? For me, I cry when I'm angry. Not everybody does. Other people yell when they're angry, you know? And so that can still certainly be a message, and it's saying, oh, you know, that I might take to a teacher and say, well, do you know that when they're angry, this is what happens? You know, and do you know, because then that way it can signal to the teacher, oh, it's not sad or they're not being shy. They're just trying to hold it together. And also the other thing is just simply just telling the students that, you know, it's important that they communicate in any way that they're comfortable, whether it's a drawing, or just if they do want to go ahead and speak emotion or say something after the drawing or explain it to me, that I'm going to be there. I'm going to hold space, right? So I think that that's what art does in this safe, non-threatening way, is that it just makes it safe. It makes it okay to cry, to say something, to explain. So it's important to know what their interpretation of their art is, and not to make those assignments, you know. And I think that can sometimes get in the way of students making the art, if it's like for a grade, or if it has to be this way or that way. And so really just kind of deconstructing it and unraveling, you know, it's not about you labeling yourself an artist. It's just, are you willing to make art? Are you willing to use your, are you willing to put something on paper? And can you explain that to me so I can understand a little bit of you and who you are? Because again, the way that I use it is probably in a more simplified way, but it really gets at those foundational needs. Connection. It's about connection for, you know, understanding the relationship. How can I relate to them? Or, you know, do I have some commonality with what they've drawn, with what they're saying? Can I share a story too? But it is, I find a lot of times when we just don't have the words, art does.
And sometimes even when we do have the words, I feel like the arts add layers that there aren't any words for. You know, like it's an additional vocabulary. It's more like
right, especially, and it's not silo. Emotions here, nice and neat in a row, and education here, and academics here. They both hand in hand. But if we don't make emotional language or emotional intelligence part of the education and part of the academics, then we're not integrating the two, and we're not giving the students the language they need to really kind of articulate what they need. They might need help, but they don't know with. They might know that they're uncomfortable, but they can't really label it. And I think that the art can bridge that gap in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when we use the arts as a language to communicate, rather than sort of like a product to be judged or analyzed, or, you know, praised for whatever qualities, when it's just another way that we can communicate, we can learn so much. Like, I love that you were talking about really understanding how students are relating to other things that are going on. You know, when we see what they're communicating in their artwork, but also the process, like what it shows us about where they are, their tolerance for frustration, or their ability to be playful, or, you know, different things that are also helpful to them when they're getting stuck, when it's like, oh, you know, take a moment and do a little drawing, or take a moment to do these different things that will help them through. So when you're doing these arts processes, you're doing this like individually with students, or are you doing this in groups that you're working with, or how does that work?
Sometimes it depends on the student. I might do one-on-one work with them, but I've also done it in groups. And a lot of times when I do art in groups, which one of my social emotional learning books called Life in the Pendulum is all about incorporating some art, and it's really pendulum drawing, you know, and how do we make these choices? You know, it's not just black or white. It's not just yes or no or right or wrong. What's that mighty middle ground that we're really searching for? And I think some of the art processes can help us further distill down what we're feeling and exactly locate, what is the emotion, or what is it that I need to ask for. But also, it's like you had said, it's giving them a resource, a strategy, right, to add to their kind of survival belt.
Yeah.
When things go awry, like, can I even ask for a 5-minute art break? Is that even possible? They don't always know, what is possible. And maybe that's something that, I say at the end of it, well, you seem to be getting a lot from your art, or maybe that's something that we look at on an IEP, an individual education plan, or I share with a teacher. They just need minutes to process, and art is the way that they process. But it depends on the age, and it also depends on if there's a situation where I really need to do support work with more than one student. I will. More typically than not, it's been one-on-one, but it doesn't always have to be.
Yeah. And I think something that folks take for granted is the way that like stress physiology works, right? It's like we experience something that stresses us, then we have a response to that stress that lives in our bodies. And if we don't have an opportunity to kind of like move through the whole cycle, even when that stressor is gone, we still have like the stress in our bodies. And then we need to find a way to sort of like move through the stress cycle, right? We need to breathe, we need to move our bodies, we need to emote in various ways. And creative expression is a huge component that can be super helpful for completing the stress cycle. And I know when I was an expressive arts therapist working with students, people would be like, what are you guys doing in there? Like people would kind of tease me like, what are y'all smoking in there? And it was like, there's something about taking that time for creative expression that doesn't connect to academics. It doesn't connect to, sometimes it doesn't even connect to talking about feelings. Sometimes it's just playing with colors and lines or making sounds or whatever it is that is really helpful to our nervous system and our brain. And we can't necessarily put words to it, but we leave going like, oh yeah, I was able to really like work through some things, doing that. And I feel like people take that for granted, how powerful creative expression can be in that stress response cycle, right?
100%. I mean, I think it definitely can help us move through fight, flight, freeze, fawn. What are we doing here? Being in that self-reflective. But even if it is just a matter of, I'm drawing some green and blue lines and I'm listening to music while I'm doing it, I still think that is educational. It might not be educational at the moment, but it's still some self-awareness, some emotional intelligence. It's at least saying, maybe my life in all the other areas is overscheduled and I just need more playtime or less scheduled time because sometimes the kids are just so busy. The parents got them signed up for, after school stuff, then school stuff, then homework stuff. And, sometimes it's just nice having free time and being able to play and not have somebody direct you on what to do and what's okay and what's not okay, and you deciding yourself. And the more we take that away from students, the less I think they're able to rely on themselves for thinking critically and creatively.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I think you and I are both passionate about, and the little title that I put on this talk, that both of us are passionate about, is also helping educators and leaders, right, understand that all of this also applies to them. And right, like helping others is an inside journey, it's an inside job. And so, and all of these tools can be super helpful to us as well as educators. Can you say a little bit about what you're learning or helping others understand about that?
Yes, major props for saying something like that, because when we take care of ourselves, then we can take care of others. And so many times people will say, oh, well, I just don't have time to go to the spa. I don't have time to go. I'm like, no. self-care can look like boundary setting, and it can look like, just the simple act of self-reflection. And the biggest question I encourage educators, parents, students to ask themselves in problem situations is, what is my role in this? And what is my role in the solution? What is my role in the problem? But what is my role in the solution? Because really, it's about accountability, right? And it's really easy to reach for that blame instead of that dialogue, or instead of that uncomfortable reflection. But we all have ownership in problems, and we all have ownership in solutions. And if we don't take that in some way, then we're missing an opportunity to not only strengthen our relationship, but probably make our job a heck of a lot easier. So that's my.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when I talk to educators, when I talk to leaders, you hear that same like objection, right? Like, I don't have time. I don't have time to build community. I don't have time to really sit and reflect about how I'm feeling about this and that. But what we don't realize is that when we're in a proactive mode, we actually have so much more control of what's going on. And we're also empowering others to be in like a more empowered creative state. Whereas when we're constantly reacting to the crazy stuff that goes on, we're running around putting out fires, we're not aligned with our purpose, we get pulled into a bazillion other things, and then the problems just exponentially go crazy. Whereas if we start from that like grounded place within ourselves of like what you were saying, that self-reflection and that self-inquiry, like, where am I in all of this? What is my intention? What am I committed to creating for these students, for myself in this situation? How do I show up in this situation to move that forward rather than just reacting to all the stuff? Then suddenly you have more time on the other side to actually enjoy learning together, right? Rather than just going around reacting.
Right. And that's exactly right. I mean, art and self-inquiry can make us more responsive and less reactive. Yeah. And a lot of times I play around with that time concept, because we obviously a lot of times end up having some idea about how we should or should not spend our time, or what we should or should not be doing. And I don't like it when people should all over themselves, because the thing is that it is about figuring out, how do you have time to keep attending to these problems and these fires? And where is that benefit of keeping on writing those green forms when the kids act up in classroom, or sending them to the SS or the principal's office? I mean, nothing's changing, folks. Nothing's changing.
Right. Everybody's super stressed. Everybody's stressed about it.
Right.
And they go home and they're freaking out about it, and they're drinking a beer over it, and another beer, or eating 10 bags of chips, right?
They're hungover teaching kids, right?
Right.
So exactly, that's the cycle we have to break, and we have to ask, how do I want to spend my time? What would my day look like in my time? And so I really encourage people to front load their time. And while it might be a lot, I mean, I have a middle schooler, so I do it at home.
Me too. Me too.
Even I'm just like, so let's talk about how much time it might take you to do this and this. And we do the elapsed time processes. And sometimes it's just a matter of accepting and allowing this failure to happen, because we're not going to get it perfect all the time. And it's okay. All we have to do is be willing, be ready, and be responsive, and trying to be proactive. But sometimes we don't get it the first time or the first 15 times, because we're human, and we can work one thing at a time. And that's where the compassion component comes in, but really I encourage people to really play with the idea of how they spend their time, because I find, as an educator and as a parent, the more I front load my time teaching these skills, the less time I have to spend worrying about it later on down the road. And then something does change, and then my son can do advocacy, and he does know integrity and accountability, and he does understand that he has a role in the solution and he has a role in the problem, and that is okay. You know, we're human beings, so let's be, right? Let's be together, let's be ourselves, let's be real. You know, let's really play on how we be, and I think art puts that fun in the being. So then that way it gives us a basis to be heard, to advocate for ourselves. The biggest thing that I have well, I guess the biggest issue that I see in high schoolers especially is advocacy. You know, what do I ask for? How do I ask? I want to be heard. Nobody cares. I don't know what to say or what to do. And so it's a way of being heard and being seen. Art can be something for that, but also social emotional learning and relationship building is a way that we can gain that connection and gain that visibility, so to speak, and being heard and being seen and having our voice count and feeling like we matter, feeling like we're cared for. And, you know, it can be as much as we're just going to change one thing this first 9 weeks of school, or we're going to change this thing, you know, from this time to this time. It doesn't have to be all at once, but small things do have a ripple effect. And what works for one school or one educator or one parent or one student might not work for the next. And so really you have to develop this common language to operate from, so you can understand each other and kind of make education and all of that just more meaningful, more purposeful.
Yeah. We've got Sandra is on here, and she had a bunch of comments that I was kind of missing because I was trying to follow a number of different things. And Sandra, are you still there on the live? She was talking about how important it is to be heard, and yeah, we'll see. No, it looks like she left the conversation. That's the tough thing about these live calls. Like when people want to be interactive and have questions and stuff, sometimes there's a lot to manage on these little screens. It's hard to see all of it going on. But yeah, so yeah, how can we use creativity and expression to make these spaces more meaningful, to be more inclusive, and also to be more aware of our own inner processes, right? And where we are in the process, I think is super important. And I love what you were saying earlier about, you know, being aware of the part that we play in the challenges that we have with students, and not blaming them, but really having a sense of like, okay, this is the part that I play, and this is what I can do differently. And then really bringing curiosity to like what is going on with our students, and allowing these creative modes of expression to inform us about who they are and where they are and what's going on with them, and giving them those tools, those additional resources to communicate with us, to take care of themselves, to understand themselves and others better. I think these are all super important pieces. So I have a couple of little like rapid fire questions that I love to ask as we're sort of like moving towards the end of the conversation. You know, you talked a little bit about some of the arts that you do, but I'm curious, do you have like a favorite pick me up or a favorite go-to self-care activity that you do for yourself?
Yeah, it changes, and right now I'm in the era of drawing, and I love oil pastels, so I do a lot of drawings with oil pastels. I love smearing. It feels kind of like blending color. It is about the process, but I really enjoy that. I also have an art shop on Etsy for those who just want to think about art in a more minimalistic way, and just have these artful reminders about just being more mindful and healthy. But that's my art for now, is drawing with oil pastels.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I love that too. There's something about just the feeling of it on the paper and smearing and blending and stuff that feels really good. Do you have a current thought leader or artist or speaker or somebody who is inspiring you lately?
Artist wise, I love Terry Runyon's work. I also love, I think they're on Instagram as well, and Lynn Guenta. I'm not sure if that's how I pronounce her last name, but amazing, that kind of work. I love mixed media type art as well. Those are the artists for me that I find really influential. Also, Tracy Vertigo's work and Janet Skate. I love those artists. Also, Tracy's from Australia, and I think Janet is always doing something funky with her art and just super creative. So yeah, lots of props to those artists.
Awesome. I'm curious, as we're kind of wrapping up our conversation, what is something that you really wish all educators knew?
I think it's okay as an educator to know you don't always have to have the answer. You know, I think sometimes I've seen where parents rely on educators to tell them, you know, what to do with their children, or maybe educators have an opinion, but I haven't seen an educator very often say, you know, I don't know that answer. You know, let's explore that together. And I think that it's okay to say, hey, do you want to work on something with me, you know, to a parent, and, you know, develop that bond with parents. And I think that it's okay, even though it's, you know, your classroom and you're in charge of students during the day. I think that it would be helpful if educators thought a little bit more about parents and how to involve them in a more active way. You know, when it comes to needs of the school, I think they've got that down pat for volunteering, but also like how to do this project oriented thing that kind of connects home life with school life. And I think that would be super important.
Yeah. So to have more like a collaborative approach rather than an expert approach.
I think that would, well, one, I mean, I think a lot of times what I've seen is that just educators have so many hats, and sometimes it may just be a matter of saying no to something that frees up some time, you know, just saying, hey, you know, who can help me out with this, or how can I think differently about my classroom strategies, or what can class management look like now, you know, and I've got all these different learning styles, so how can I appeal to them and consider mental health. But also, it's just, I mean, I invite educators to think about the way that they spend their day, and or the homework that they assign, or the assignments they give, or the way that they teach, thinking, what is the purpose of this? And can I do this different? Can I do this to get myself off the hook to something that I really need to prioritize? You know, because I think also in this time of putting out fires, everything can seem like a priority, but really, if we think about the task and just write them down, but if we order them in top 10 and work on our top 2 or top 3, I think that's incredible. You know, but we can't be everything to everybody. And I've seen definitely where educators have enabled situations, or been enabled, or taken on too many things. And I, you know, I understand with all the different dynamic family situations and duties of families or parents or even educators themselves have taken on, that this can happen. I mean, this is part of the human experience in some respect. Really just thinking about where the boundaries need to be, how to spend the time, what is my role. It's okay to be collaborative. It's okay not to have the ideas all the time. and have them
Right.
work all.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of that inside journey, right? Is like that we're talking about, is it's so important to get really clear on like, what am I here for? What are my strengths? How can I align with my purpose and my passion? And then who can I get that can support that, so that I'm not like getting pulled into bazillion different directions and that's what burns us out, right?
Yeah.
And then I love that question of like, how do we really connect to purpose, like when we're whatever it is that we're doing with young people, so it's not just like make work for all of us, but like how are we making what we're doing really meaningful and purposeful, and how can we kind of like, I don't know, accomplish a lot more in a smarter way. Like not do more, but do it more effectively.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that it does also cause, me to think about how we think about control. So many people want control over this or control over that, and we don't know another way to do things. But sometimes it's okay to let go of some of that control and let students, take the form of some leadership roles in class, or do that collaboration, not just with parents, but students, or other teachers, and rely on some of that co-teaching stuff. I mean, I've stepped in definitely for teachers myself and said, okay, you look burned out. What can I do to help you? And they're like, can you teach this? Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about this. And
Yeah.
we talking about tolerance, or we talk about choices, and but there's no one way of doing it and it turn out all right. It is what it is. The most important thing for me, at least as an educator and parent, is that students are showing up who they are, and that I'm showing up in alignment with who I am. So then that way I can liberate them to show up in an authentic way.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. Where I always, when I get in these talks, I feel like we could go on forever because we have a lot of things in common and common passions and common message around all of this. And I really appreciate you jumping on here today and sharing your insights and your wisdom and your passion for using the arts in these educational spaces. I'm so passionate about that myself too. And for those of you that are watching, I have a YouTube channel where I have interviews with a whole bunch of artist leaders who have similar kinds of insights into how we're moving forward through this time. So you can check that out, and check out Nikki's page, and yeah, connect with her about these different services. Do you have anything in particular that you want people to check out that you're offering right now, or some place where people can learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. I mean, on my Instagram page, you can definitely see the LinkedIn page some of my writing samples and arts, and some of my background. But also, I'm going to be taking some applications and accepting clients for some of the social emotional freelance writing that I'm doing, whether it's for organizations that want to secure grant writing or grant funding, excuse me, for expanding services that they're offering to students or parents, or whether it's just about creating community awareness. I'm definitely open to take on some more freelance writing clients at this time in the next couple of months. And then also I'm going to be creating a group with a visual journaling group with the theme of hidden messages. And it's all about these things that may not be apparent, but as we go inward into ourselves, things that we might find out and discover about who we are. And so I'll be doing that one-on-one, even small group, depending on interest. Sometimes people don't want to share right away in front of a group, and understandable, but I'll be getting flyers out for that. And parents too. It's not just educators, but educators. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
People in the school and in that intersection of parenting and educating. So I'm definitely open to help families as well with some continuity of services that schools provide, or if they want to learn more about how to incorporate SEL into their home, or how to get on the bandwagon of art and making art and how it can be purposeful income. I'm open. So direct message me. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me, for sure. In Instagram, if you're interested in something, let me hear about it, and I'll definitely respond.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, and folks, stay tuned, because Nikki and I are also going to be working on writing some stuff together about the arts and how it can be so helpful for trauma healing. So we'll share that with you when that's ready. But
yeah,
thank you all for watching, and thank you so much, Nikki. I will see you soon in the virtual world, hopefully soon.
Okay.